Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Don't Risk It podcast presented by VFIS Client Risk Solutions. This program focuses on the exposures our clients frequently encounter and discusses some potential solutions to help reduce these exposures. I'm your host, Chris Rogers with VFIS Client Risk Solutions, and today we're talking with Sam Yank from Industrial Inspections and Analysis, where Sam is a Director of Sales. Industrial Inspection and Analysis is an industrial inspection and certification company that provides inspection and certification services to numerous industries across the United States. Sam is here today to talk about their fire department services with a specific focus on aerial apparatus testing. Sam, I want to thank you for joining me, and it's a pleasure to have you on the program.
Hey, no, not a problem at all. I appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. To start the line of questioning, we want to give the listeners a little background about your organization. So can you tell me more about Industrial Inspection and Analysis and your role in the organization?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So Industrial Inspections and Analysis is a pure TIC company. So it's testing, inspections, and certifications. We really pride ourselves on not wanting to get too far into any type of repairs or anything like that. It's purely testing, inspections, and certifications. And then within that kind of realm, one of our flagship groups is kind of what we're here to talk about today, which is our fire testing capabilities. So, excited to talk more about that.
Yeah, I was looking at your website. You guys are in a lot of industries, but obviously we're here to talk about fire. But y'all got y'all's big toe dipped in a lot of different things.
Yeah, we kind of have three main kind of buckets of how we classify ourselves. We have 9 labs throughout the U.S. that do all kinds of different non-destructive testing and some destructive testing. And then we have our industrial group that's kind of in the power plants, gas, coal, nuclear, chemical plants. We do a lot of outage work and different things within the plants to keep them on the up and up. And then our lifting group, which does fire trucks, bucket trucks, digger derricks, mobile cranes, etc. So kind of a lot of fleet stuff on that side.
Man, going into nuclear facilities, you got to have a few background checks to get into one of those things.
Yeah, that is correct.
I went to one time, and it was almost harder to get out of a prison than it was the nuclear facility. They keep that thing, which is comforting. It's nice to know that they got those things nice and buckled or buttoned down.
Yeah, absolutely. I live real close to a nuclear plant here in Arizona, and I'm glad that they have the regulations that they do.
For sure. So as you mentioned, that we're here to talk about the fire department services component of your operation. And we're going to focus on the aerial apparatus. What are the recommended inspections for aerial apparatus for our fire departments?
Yeah, so absolutely. So it's definitely a regulated thing. It follows the NFPA 1911 standard. All the aerials have to be inspected at least annually, and then there's kind of a 5-year requirement as well that does non-destructive testing. So, things like magnetic particle testing, dye penetrant testing, ultrasonic testing, they require that every 5 years. A lot of fire departments today are doing that annually, but that's not part of the annual requirement. It's just kind of an add-on to it.
So can you kind of go into some key differences? I think you kind of just did, but some key differences between the annual versus the 5-year non-destructive testing. Is the annual kind of if they want to do it, but the 5-year non-destructive is kind of more required, at least from our insurance side. What about from your perspective?
Yeah. No, so an annual is a required test. It just doesn't have some of the non-destructive tests within that process. So an annual, you'd go through and do things like visual operational. You're doing timing tests to make sure the ladder can go 360 degrees in an allotted time. And this is all, following the manufacturer's recommendations and the standard. And then further, you do load tests and ladder twist tests, and there's a whole bunch of tests that go along with an annual. And then in addition to that, so a 5-year test will include all of that and more. And the and more part would be if it's an aluminum ladder, you're going to do dye penetrant testing on those welds and make sure there's nothing going on there, as well as ultrasonic testing on key bolts and pins and things that hold that aerial in place and kind of the structure of the whole thing. And then if it's a steel ladder, that's when the magnetic particle comes in. Again, you're testing all those critical welds and making sure that nothing is going on that you can't see, with the naked eye. So that's part of the non-destructive testing portion.
Okay, absolutely. Yeah, I misspoke a little bit on the, the requirement versus, on the annual versus 5-year non-destruct. We want them both done. It's just I wanted to kind of hit on the differences, and you did that. So
Sure.
thank you for clarifying my my speech error.
No problem at all.
So, is there a cost difference? Is it minimal between these two? You mentioned that some departments are just having the 5-year non-destructive test done every year. So, is there a significant cost difference, or is that just something that it makes, in your opinion, makes it easier administratively to do that every year as opposed to did we do it last year? Did we do it 3 years ago? So, can you kind of get
Okay.
into the cost of that?
Sure. Well, it's kind of a couple part question here. So, administratively, it definitely is easier from a tracking perspective to just do it every year. Then you're not, like you said, you're not. When did I do that 5 year? Is it coming up? Is it not? So it certainly is easier to track if you're just doing it every year. And then the other piece to that, if you're doing it every year, you can kind of start to see trends if you're starting to notice areas where the paint's cracking a little bit more. Maybe that area is taking more of a stress. So you're utilizing your tools within your 5-year capabilities to monitor it year over year. It's definitely takes longer with adding those tests, so it costs a little bit more. But again, if we're going to be there already, we're already there, set up, so on and so forth. So the cost isn't a huge, it's not a huge difference, but it's definitely a little bit of a difference.
Well, nowadays we're dealing with aerials that are starting at around $2 million, so we probably want to make sure that we keep those things in tip-top shape because it's not easy to get one as far as finances, and it's a long timeline as far as getting one manufactured.
Yeah, absolutely.
You mentioned the NFPA standard that outlines the testing requirements. Does it cover both annual or 5-year non-destructive, or does a single standard mention both of those testing requirements?
Yeah, that standard will kind of show both.
Okay. So just to kind of go over, you went over some of the steps, but what steps are performed during a non-destructive test that aren't performed during an annual inspection? You kind of explained the difference in the process, but could you, you mentioned a little more time, but could you go into some of those specific tests for the non-destructive testing?
Yeah, sure. So like we'll just take the dye penetrant if it's aluminum or the magnetic particle if it's steel. So if you have a 105-foot ladder, it's going to take you some time to walk down that ladder and check all those critical welds. So that's another, I mean, you're looking at least an hour to do that. And then you're looking at the base of it, where your turntable is attached to the chassis. There's a lot of structure there and a lot of key welds and different bolts, pins that keep that ladder up. So a lot of that stuff, getting in there, taking the time to get the measurements or checking those welds thoroughly. And then, we try and make sure that we leave the area as clean or cleaner than when we got there. So cleaning up after ourselves with dye penetrant or, magnetic particle dust to make sure we're not leaving a mess for you guys or for the fire department. So that's kind of the stuff that takes the time. And then going up underneath the truck, checking pins and bolts, suspension bolts and all the different things that go into that. Those are kind of where your time is spent.
Because it's testing procedures that you have to physically go through and do the process. It's not a visual inspection. So setting up and doing those tests are, I'm guessing, what takes the bulk of the time on that.
Right.
So if repairs are needed, can you explain the different levels of repairs that are needed? I've reviewed quite a few reports from your organization and some other organizations, and there are different levels of repairs. Some impact the certification, some don't. So can you kind of go into what would impact the certification and what wouldn't during an inspection?
Yeah, not a problem at all. So so there's a couple different things. So if a repair is needed to where you're dealing with a load-bearing component, you need to get recertified for things like that. If you believe the vehicle has been used, been in an accident, or been used beyond its capability, you would want kind of us to come back out and do, another test to make sure that it's still safe for your guys to get up on it. and then any other repairs where you think that could have affected anything structure wise, obviously, again, you're going to want another set of eyes on it. So we always try and urge people to lean toward err on the side of caution, so to speak, so that we make sure those guys and girls going up on those ladders get home safely to their families.
So with this next question, I don't expect you to speak for the entire industry that does these inspections, but what's the time frame for a repair? Let's say that I did, that we had an inspection done last week and found some things that impacted the inspection process or the certification process. How long do we typically have to make those repairs before we don't have to go through another inspection process?
Yeah, that's kind of tricky. So I was gonna typically those trucks are vital to the community. So we see repairs getting done fairly quick, unless it's like a specialty part and stuff. If you're part of a major city, Virginia Beach comes to mind. They have shops and mechanics on site. So unless they have to order a specialty part, they can usually get it fixed fairly quick, because it's important for those things to be back out on the streets and making sure the community's safe. So it's a little bit of a loaded question, because it really depends on how big of a repair we're talking about. And then as we saw maybe through COVID with some of the supply chain issues, where getting parts might have been a little bit harder. But for the most part, the turnarounds are fairly quick, and we can get those trucks back in service pretty fast.
I was going to say, with COVID, we could have all the intentions of getting something repaired and have it, the time and everything laid out, but that doesn't mean the part's going to be there for us to repair the unit.
Yeah, we certainly saw a lot more reserve trucks being utilized as mainline, because they just couldn't get parts and stuff. So I think it's a lot better today, but there still could be some of that lingering on.
So just to clarify, you all are strictly involved in the inspection process. You're not a repair shop, service shop, things like that. You just identify problems, report problems, and then give the department, give them a report to let them know what they need to address.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. So how can a department find out more information about your organization, possibly setting up an inspection for their aerial unit for their department?
Yeah. So obviously you can visit us on our website. It's industrial-ia.com. Tons of great literature on there. You can go to the Knowledge Hub, find articles, read our newsletters. I mean, there's just a breadth of knowledge on that website. And then I can be happy to give my phone number, email address. They can get a hold of us off the website as well. So any of the above kind of things would work.
Okay, yeah, we'll include that in the description of the program to to give our clients an avenue to get in contact with you. Are there any other services that you all provide in the fire department realm, or do y'all focus strictly on the aerial side?
No, yeah, we absolutely do. So we do aerials and ground ladders all over the United States, and then we have another branch of our fire department testing group that's headquartered out of the New Jersey area, and they do hose and pump testing, and we're working on expanding that business too, and kind of going west and starting to service more of the United States with that. But again, that's your annual hose testing, pump testing, where we can test appliances and nozzles that go with all that stuff. So we're really pushing for IIA being a full service, soup to nuts fire department testing group. So
well, you just used a 3-letter acronym, and that's what I'm used to in this industry. And I didn't know if y'all were going by that or going with the full name. So I'm gonna go with the IIA now.
Yeah. So we're industrial inspections and analysis. Just that's a mouthful. So you'll hear that hopefully in the industry more and more as IIA, fire department testing. So
Well, I had to record the intro 4 times because you're right; it is a mouthful to say, and I had a little tongue twister going on, but I got through it.
Sure.
So
Nope, totally understand.
one last question to round out our conversations today. Let's say a department decides that they want to go with your organization and they want to have a test done. What steps should they take to prepare for an inspection?
Yeah, the best thing that the department could do is obviously to make sure that they have a backup, if when possible, that they have a backup truck. So if they get a call halfway through the test, they don't have to pull it away from us and go do something. We can work around that when that happens. We understand emergencies happen, but if possible, having a backup truck and then having all the guys' gear, all their turnout gear and everything off of the truck. And then, even going a further step, if we're going to do the non-destructive test or any of the tests, really having the truck be clean is very helpful because it just helps us not have anything in the way. But industry wide, they keep their trucks pretty clean for the most part. So that's one thing that's good.
Yeah, it's kind of a daily occurrence. You go around
Right.
and see them cleaning the trucks, which is it's nice to see. Is there
Yeah,
a
absolutely.
is there a time frame that they should set aside? I know that it can depend on what's being done and what you find, but is there kind of a baseline that this is the least amount of time you should set aside?
Yeah, and anywhere from a half a day to a full day on an aerial. And again, it depends on, there's so many different types of aerials and lengths, and whether it's a platform truck or just a regular stick, whether we're just doing an annual or it's a 5-year NDT test. There's a lot of different scenarios, but anywhere from a half a day to a full day on an aerial.
Well, Sam, it's been a pleasure to talk with you about this. It's a very important topic in our for our departments. It's something that has to be done to take care of these very expensive trucks. So I want to thank you for what you do for the industry, and thank you for joining me on the program today.
Absolutely. And feel free to reach out if anybody has any needs. We're happy to be of service.
Good to hear. And I want to thank you for listening to the program and for your interest in VFIS safety resources. I want to thank our guest, Sam Yank, once again for his time and information. Please consider subscribing to our program to stay up to date on new content releases. Also, if you like what you've heard, please consider leaving a review below. For more information about the many resources available from VFIS, please visit VFIS.com. And to submit ideas for future discussions, please reach out by emailing VFIS Risk Control at VFIS.com. Thanks, everyone, and have a great day. The views, information, or opinions expressed during this program are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent those of Gladfelter Insurance Group, VFIS, and its employees.